that you have already attended committee meetings and of course full board, but this is the first time that you've actually been here for Parks and Public Spaces. So for everyone's benefit, I'd love the four of you to just briefly introduce yourselves again and say hello. Let's begin with Mary. And unmute yourself.
She's not on yet.
Oh, I thought I saw her. Okay, how about Kelly?
Hi, everybody. I'm Kelly Burton. I work in CB5. I work at FIT part-time, and then I also, when I'm not furloughed, work in fashion at Times Square. And nice to meet you all.
Thank you. And Noah, you're on, right?
Yes, hi, my name is Noah Stern. I have lived in the CB5 for my whole life. And while I do not go to school in CB5, I have worked in CB5 at the farmers market in Union Square. And I have been involved with Gail Brewer's youth committee last year. So I've been very involved in youth politics, and it's very nice to meet you all. So thank you for having me here tonight.
Thank you so much. And is Mary on yet or no?
No.
All right, well, we will hear from her when she logs in. And in the meantime, I think we have not been joined by Steve Simon yet, right? I'm looking at the attendees.
I don't see him on there. Luke is on the phone with someone, so maybe he's trying to figure that out, but unless.
Okay, well, we will leapfrog that item and we will jump right to Madison Square Park Conservancy, who are joining us to discuss revised plans for the food market in Worth Square. I believe it would probably behoove the new committee members to have a little bit of context around what we are hearing tonight. In the thumbnail sketch of this long history is that for many years there was a food market twice a year in Worth Square called Madison Square Eats. You are probably familiar with it. And there was a lot of support in the community for this event, but there was also a lot of concerns around navigation issues and signage and other things. And over the course of many years, we worked with the Conservancy to address those concerns and improve them year after year. At the time that the contract expired for that particular event and it was time for a new one, the Parks Department needed to issue a new RFP for operators for a new iteration of this event, which is one that brings in much needed revenue for the Conservancy, which, as a reminder, Madison Square Park receives $0 from New York City. So at the time of the RFP, that was when Community Board 5 formally weighed in on the best ways to shape the public conversation around how a new iteration of this food market could better address the public benefit. In response to that, not in response to that, but over the course of several months, working with the Conservancy and the Parks Department on the language for the RFP, a lot of Community Board 5 and the public's questions and concerns became baked into the text of the RFP itself, thereby ensuring that those concerns would be addressed since they would be required of any operator who would be ultimately selected as a part of the process. So those concerns included pedestrian navigation down Fifth Avenue along the east side of Worth Square, sight lines above the event, congestion so that there's a possibility for navigation through Worth Square, and a lot of interest in the identity of the vendors. There was always an effort and an integrity on part of the event to have local small businesses and restaurants showcased, of course. But with a new iteration of the event, we wanted to prioritize that and have a deeper conversation around that. And we were thrilled when last year we learned that Italy would be the partner that would be presenting this event in partnership with the Conservancy. So in a normal world, we would have already seen the first iteration of this new event as it normally happens every year in May. And because of COVID, obviously plans have completely changed. And so the Conservancy asked to come in order to present an update on their plans and a revised layout and revised plans based on the new reality. So we are happy to have you here. We have Keats here, although I see that you're called Robin on the.
I am.
You are, so don't be mistaken, everyone. This is Keats Meyer speaking.
That's odd.
If you want to kick
I
it off.
don't know how that happened. I've never had that happen before.
Robin might have forwarded you her link. You should be able to rename yourself,
Well,
or I can do it.
just know that I'm Keats. It's okay. And Robin's a fabulous person, so I'm happy to be known as Robin. So thank you, Clayton, for that introduction. I have to say that Rory, who is supposed to be giving this presentation, can't get completely on. He can hear us, but we can't see him. Rory, can you
Oh,
speak?
here, I will promote him to panelist. That will help.
Oh, okay, that's the problem.
Hold on.
That would be great because was not prepared to give the presentation, but I would if I had to. There he is.
Here we
Hi,
go.
Rory. So, yeah, thank you, Clayton, for the introduction. I'm sure you all know Madison Square Park, and we are the organization that funds 100% of everything that happens in there. Pre-COVID days, that was 60,000 people a day. I don't know what the number is now. I think it may be a lot less because there's no workers in the park. But I would say that the people that come need it a lot more. And so I don't know who of you have been going. It's been challenging with the dog run closed and the playground closed and the lawns all open. We're honored and thrilled to be a special place for people that stayed open throughout all of this, but it's been really challenging. Our workers have been, I think, courageous to come in by the subway, and I'm proud of them all. And it's really means a lot to see all of you here who volunteer and do all this work. It's a lot. We're all going through a lot. The Italy thing, I think Clayton laid the context. I'm going to hand it over to Rory, who's working with Italy, to kind of lay it all out for us. And so, thank you for your time. Rory?
Hey guys, should I just go through it, Clayton?
Yeah, go ahead.
And you can
Okay.
share it, right? Or do you
Yeah,
want me
I can share it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, thanks everybody for taking the time to look at this. There are a couple of requests. I know one of them may not be pertinent to this, but Clayton can stop me or let me know what we can share and what we can't. I'm going to share my screen now. Everybody see it?
Yeah.
So this is the new socially distanced Mad Square Italy 2020. Clayton, I know you gave an introduction. I was trying to join and rejoin this Zoom meeting to get my video up. And Keats, I only heard half of yours, so pardon me if I'm being redundant here.
Okay.
This is a brand new layout proposal that has passed muster with the Parks Department so far, pending some social distancing stuff like signage and that. And it's the first time we're presenting it here to the community board. This is a dynamic layout, but it's pretty put together. I'm going to show you first the pure concept, or what Mad Square Italy should be without coronavirus.
Or would have been.
What's that?
Would have been.
Would have been, and hopefully will be at some point. We had multiple points of service, all one vendor, Italy, but similar to Italy's model in Italy Flatiron and their properties elsewhere. There are kind of different restaurants and different places for you to buy groceries and stuff like that. But underneath the hood, it's all Italy. The pure concept had a pizza station, Safo sandwiches and salad, a pasta station, a bar, and a scuola or school for interactive lessons and cooking lessons and things like that. However, and this was supposed to take place in May of this year and again in September of this year, following the RFP and the model that was allowed for by Parks and by CB5 over the past years. May was canceled due to coronavirus, and we were looking at possibly adding October, but frankly, with everything that's going on with coronavirus and then the pressure of the city to activate something, we are now looking at a start date of the 30th of July, and then going through the 56 days total to the 23rd of September. The other thing that's been changed from the pure concept is at this time, we're not preparing any food on site. So it's not really a restaurant, and that's 100% due to Department of Health complications and the fact that they can't even review a new plan, let alone vet it. It's technically a retail operation. The revised concept is focusing on produce and packaged foods. The community highlighted points, still some kind of interaction, although frankly, we're not sure how exactly to do that in action with social distancing, but we can imagine that it would be people behind the glass, behind the service counter, explaining some of their products. And Italy right now is working hard on getting those upstate farmers as partners for any kind of program starting the 30th. The beverage offer, beer and wine is what we're looking to serve. Again, using ingredients that are local and Italian. The food offer, as I mentioned, is all prepared in Flatiron, Italy. So nothing prepared on site. Everything will be packaged and sold as a packaged product. So there's no food preparation on site. There's just a couple of pages of inspiration. The timeline originally, again, was May and September, 28 days in May, 28 days in September. That has been condensed to 56 days straight, with the ideal start time of the 30th of July and the end date 56 days later on the 23rd of September. Here is our social distancing plan. It creates a perimeter around Worth Square with a single entrance and single egress, entrance from the northwest and egress at the southeast. There are two types of patron. The first type would be those who seat in within the confines of Worth Square. And to maintain social distancing, we're working with the Parks Department on what we can get approved in terms of floor markings in combination with active attendees or ambassadors to help maintain social distancing. The idea is with a single line through the seating area that's 12 feet in width, we can maintain that 6-foot minimum social distancing. And once people are sitting at their tables, of which this model calls for 32 top tables, that's 2 persons per table, the assumption is that you're in a quarantine or a pod with that person. Once you sit down at your chair, you can take off your mask. Once you leave, you follow that single line, so you're maintaining your social distance from anybody else who's seating, and you exit. Alternately, you can take to go, and so you'd come through this flow, and you would simply follow what's shown here in green through to the exit. This is just a layout of what the kiosk looks like. I'll hover over with my mouse. This is the kiosk structure, roughly 28 feet by 10 feet. And then this is the back of house, which really just holds 3 things, 2 of which are shown here: the generators, a hand wash station, and the third, which is not shown in here, would be any refuse or garbage in a wheelie bin that goes back to Flatiron Italy's composting or garbage collection site back in Flatiron, Italy. This is a layout of interior of the kiosk. It's very simple, given the fact that it's all prepared foods. We have a fridge, we have a freezer, we have a kegerator for beer, and then we have what's called rack shelving, just basically shelves for display of produce. This is an exploration of the social distancing that we're working on. And now here's the first of two things that is definitely germane to Community Board 5, because it is an alteration from the original approved layout. One of the points in the RFP was to maintain accessibility to General Worth and to the Worth Monument. And with the social distancing layout, it is impossible to maintain for the public accessibility to General Worth. From the Parks Department point of view, they would like the community board to say, okay, we understand that during coronavirus times and social distancing, it's okay to have this kind of setup that technically does remove accessibility to General Worth. And then the second one, which I referenced at the top of this presentation, I'm not exactly sure if it's totally germane to this committee, is our work with the New York State Liquor Authority to get those beer and wine, the ability to serve beer and wine on site. The short on this is that we won't be able to get enough daily permits, which is the way Mad Square Eats previously to this iteration was able to serve beer and wine. We're not going to be able to get enough of those to cover the 56-day run. There's a chance for us to get the seasonal permit, seasonal license, but to do that, we need to have CB5 understand that they've already reviewed this plan or waive the 30-day. And frankly, even if we do all this, there's a chance that the State Liquor Authority, because they're working on reduced staff and they're overwhelmed, they may not be able to turn around that seasonal permit, but that's our only shot. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, when we're not preparing food and we're serving a limited amount of packaged food that had to be packaged off-site before it was served, really the only way for us to make enough to cover costs of production and to meet our revenue share with Madison Square Park Conservancy, it really is contingent on having as much beer and wine that we can serve safely over the 56-day run. And I think that's the last slide. It is.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I think what might be most useful is to tend to the two elements that you formally need our input on first. Regarding the licensing issue, the PSQL committee is the committee that formally weighs in on license issues. So for Parks and Public Space Committee members, obviously we are free to ask questions and comment as we please tonight on this issue, but I believe that it is appropriate to leave it to the PSQL committee to determine how to move forward, given that this particular seasonal license we have never objected to. In fact, I don't believe we've ever even, after initial years, even weighed in formally. We just had a no comment because it happened twice a year. And the issues that we had around the event were issues that this committee hears, not issues regarding the alcohol license. I don't expect that our position on the alcohol license would have changed no matter what. If anything, if we approve of the improvements given to the layout of the event generally, then if anything, there would be more support. So unless anyone objects, and I'm Vicky, chair of CB5, is on the call as well. And Craig, who is our vice chair, is the vice chair of PSQL too. So I don't know, Craig, if you want to weigh in on that at all about procedurally moving forward, but I believe it seems appropriate to let PSQL take that up if they deem it necessary.
Yeah, and just to reiterate what Clayton said, we've never, I don't even think we've brought you in to the PSQL committee on this issue ever, in my recollection. I think that PSQL, can take it up. Nick and I can discuss it this week and go forward and potentially move pretty quickly on that.
Great. that said, as we move forward into the discussion, anybody who has any questions or concerns about this issue, obviously feel free to raise that, and that can go forward to Craig and Nick's conversations as well. As for the Worth Square accessibility, I'm happy to hear people's opinions on that. I think obviously, given the conditions on the ground, I can't imagine there would be any objection to the non-permanent alteration to our recommendations that went into the RFP about accessibility to the monument. I don't see that as a really huge issue, but I'd love to hear from other committee members if you have any questions or comments about that point. And if so, you can raise your hand. And I am seeing none. So I kind of feel like this is, oh, we have one from Chris Clark, yeah.
Hi, yeah, I'm sorry if this was already addressed, but I just wanted to confirm what I'm sort of assuming, which is that entrance into this seating area is only for people who are going to be purchasing something here. It's not possible to sort of game the system as someone who wants to check out the monument to sort of go into the seating area and not get anything.
You know, that's funny. I think that we will let anybody in, and there's some social distancing stuff that we're working on. Like, we may require a mask. There's some liability issues right now that we're just working through. We may even do temperature check, but I, try not to go overboard here, but obviously we're going to have to do whatever's mandated. And we're just a little too far out to be able to say what we can and can't do. We just have to be flexible. However, what I don't think we're going to do is say, hey, are you going to buy something today or not? I think there's a bit of self-regulation, meaning I expect there to be a line. We can only service so many people, and then you have to be 6 feet apart from each other. So I think that if you're not, if you don't want to be a patron, I think you would self-regulate. That's what I think. But let's talk about the possible scenario, if not probable, of somebody wanting to see the Worth Monument. Then yes, you could wait in line and see it. But I wouldn't, we can't create a single line just to view General Worth's monument in this scenario. Or if we could, we would be compromising a lot of other things. So that's my long-winded answer to you, Chris. I think you could come in ostensibly and to go see the monument. You would just be waiting online to do so.
Got it. Yeah, thank you for that. That answers my question, definitely.
Aaron.
Hey guys, just a question, clarification on the flighting or the end date, right? In the original proposal, what was the sort of seasonal window, and then is the new proposal, and I commend you guys on figuring out a really tough challenge here. I think it was a hard challenge, but is the end date, is this going to go a little bit later into the fall, or what's the idea with how to sort of bridge the summer to fall, and is that a different time than the original proposal of Madison Square East?
So the original concept is it's specific and also a little vague. In places in the contract from the Parks Department, it says the month of May, the month of September. In other places, it's 28 days of operation per month. So what we did here was, and also, by the way, there's setup and takedown. So the only good thing out of coronavirus right now with this proposal is that we have one setup and one takedown, not two setups and two takedowns. But we've maintained the 28 days of operation. We're conservative there. And so it's simply 28 plus 28 with a start date of the 30th of July. So it's 56 days from the 30th of July to the 23rd of September. The Parks Department has been very helpful and has tried to be as flexible as they can. As you guys know, the concession process through the Parks Department is highly regulated. It has the controller's review and has the law review. And so as we are trying to work, and they're also saying, can you guys do something, please? Like, it was a city directive, do things. We're trying to do something. We also have to recognize the fact that every little change from the contract does add up. And so, you know, we picked and choose what was the most important to us, and we left things that, you know, wasn't as important. I can tell you though, from Italy's perspective, more than 56 days would be preferable. You know, we could run this for 4 months. It's just, I don't think it's tenable. And then of course, weather gets in the way, forgetting anything about a second wave.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and just to add to that, from the park's perspective, you know, we've lost something like at least 40% of our revenue. And as you know, we raise everything to run the park. So the revenues from this event are important. And I think additionally, the ability to shop outside, to go and get food and things that you can then eat, whether you take it to go and go sit in the park, or you take it to go and go home, or whether you sit in Moore Square. I think it's really important to have access to outside services, as we all know.
Aaron, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
So would you mind putting up the seating layout again?
Sure.
I just wanted to ask a question about the two tops, because you mentioned 30 tables and I didn't count that many.
Let me find the one that's probably the best. Let me see if I can zoom in as well.
So it looks like the umbrellas are tables, but actually
Right.
the little
So these little
table,
guys.
there's
these
2
little guys
tables with
are-
every umbrella.
Right.
So these little guys are tables.
Each little Rolex watch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's right. The
I hadn't
little
thought of it
watches.
that way, but yes.
The little watches are the tables, and each table has 2 chairs.
So it's 2, 4, 6, 8.
Also, just so you can see it, like where my little hand cursor is going up and down right now, those are planters. So that's partition. So the walkway is here, and then down here, and then back here. You enter-
And Rory, show them if you are just going to go.
And if you're just going, you're going along the curb lane here and out.
I see. I wasn't seeing the 6 tables on the right side.
Yeah.
Yes. And then this would be markings on the ground, but it goes up like this and then around like that. There's an attendant over here. If these seats are all taken, you're pushed this way. If these seats are all taken, you're taking it to go.
And so the attendant's role is basically to queue manage and get the people in the seats?
Well, yes, and also then sanitizing between sittings.
And how many people do you have dedicated to that?
I could not tell you right now, but we will have enough to do attending and to do sanitizing. And sanitizing is cleaning up after people if they leave their stuff on the table. We're still working out the operations of all this.
Okay.
There's basically 3 types of or 4 types of employee on site. There are people who are serving from behind the counters. There's security, and that's aside from being mandatory from the SLA standpoint, it's just good to have. And then attendees, and then people who are keeping the whole place sanitary, which is sanitizing surfaces primarily.
Okay, what other questions do we have from the committee?
So I have a question. This is Kelly.
Hi, Kelly.
I think I missed it, and I'm sorry if I did, but can you just explain about access into the area and then the queuing for the concession? So you're going to have stations in front of all of the concessions, like a station in front of beer, a station in front of wine. And is that what is going to be monitored in terms of how many people can queue for product?
Yes, but let me just be clear. I think maybe you hopped in when we were explaining the pure concept, the concept that doesn't involve a pandemic. What we're looking at right now is one kiosk that serves beer, wine, and prepared foods, which is most likely ice cream and then some farm products.
Great. So what's the plan to keep the social distancing at that station?
So, and I apologize because we're still working on this, but if you follow my cursor, every 6 feet, there will be a floor marking, and that's where you stand when you're waiting to get served. Over here,
That's
we have
super clear.
Yeah, and we have a security position over here that then directs you. Currently, we have 2 points of sale. We might be able to create 3 points of sale. Obviously, the more points of sale we can create, the faster we can put people through. But at the same time, you know, getting people to sit down, how long do they sit? It's a dynamic process right now. There's no one quick formula, but we are getting there.
Thank you.
And then one other aspect that is being worked on, because Italy has experimented with it in some of their other locations, and that's online ordering and advanced ordering, so that you're not standing at the counter figuring out what you're going to eat.
But that would be required or just an option?
We don't know yet. I mean, like right as of yesterday, it was everything became cashless, because we want to minimize contact. This morning, cash may be coming back in. You know, it's a dynamic thing. From an operations standpoint, the more people you can service, the better you're going to do from a revenue standpoint. But to do that safely, and also for the first time in a new location like this, the more complicated you make these plans, the more these plans can go awry. So we're trying to balance that out. We've got about 4 weeks to figure it out.
A question from Noah.
What is the plan in terms of having the line go in a certain direction, either towards 24th Street or kind of going alongside on the outside of it, west of Fifth Avenue? Has that been kind of thought out in terms of traffic and the bike lanes, both on 25th Street and on Fifth Avenue?
Yeah, so we pulled in our back of house. This is a fence line. These are 10-foot panel fence units. We've pulled this in from this area here for exactly that reason, and it's not in this plan, but essentially the line continues down this way along the outside perimeter. Our goal is to not have a line that extends farther past that.
And then how many people do you think, or how many pods would fit from the west to the east side of the square, 6 feet apart from one another?
I can run that math. Let me show you. We haven't run the math on the east-west line. You can count back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 20 people here. Figure another 20 people down this way. And depending, I mean, I know the General Assembly's canceled now, so hopefully we'll be able to get NYPD barricades. If we create another line, then maybe we can do another bent snake around. But from an experience standpoint, I know that we don't want people waiting that long to get into this. It's just not, that wouldn't be cool from an Italy standpoint. So we're actually working harder on trying to get more service through to avoid a line. You're absolutely right, though. We do have to figure that in, and we do have some real estate to be able to do that.
Thanks.
Question from Todd.
Hi there. I'm just looking at your plan. So if I'm a pedestrian walking south on Fifth Avenue, so if I want to continue walking south, I'm going to see a series of boxes or planters that are going to prevent me from walking south, along the edge of Worth Square. So is that I mean, what is the plan? I have to walk around?
Yes, so you could make a left and cross Fifth Avenue and go down on the east side of Fifth Avenue, or you can make a right and go down on the west side of the Broadway, what I call a Broadway Extension, but old Broadway going the wrong direction.
I mean, would it be that much? I mean, really, that's asking a lot of a pedestrian. A lot of the pedestrians like to stroll down that part of Fifth Avenue and take in the views of the park, especially during the summer. Even when it was, the old concession, you could more or less walk north-south and south-north along the edge of the place and, take in the sights. Would it be that big of a problem if you just modified it? So take away some of those tables and make some room so that there could be a pedestrian corridor along that part of Fifth Avenue?
Actually,
Can I chime in on that one? I kind of feel that the importance of outdoor food consumption and purchasing is so enormous right now that the need to take in the park from a stroll down south, you can do that on the east side. You can still do it. What you can't do in so much of the city anymore is go inside a restaurant. And this offers the opportunity to sit with a friend and eat some food. So I think the trade-off is important.
So Todd, I'm going to just piggyback on your question, and in response to Rory and Keats, I completely agree with you. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. But the issue is just that it's not an academic exercise, as we saw over many years with our concerns about Fifth Avenue pedestrian navigation in the past with EATS. They're just going to do it. It's not about the trade-off. I agree with you, but people just don't walk to Broadway. I mean, some people do, but many people just walk down the middle of Fifth Avenue. That's just what they do. New Yorkers are New Yorkers. And right now in particular, I'm finding that pedestrians are more courageous than ever. And so I guess that's really the question, is how can we, I don't know if this is all in rapid flux, obviously, but if NYPD has weighed in on this or anything, but what will you do when people do walk outside of the planters down Fifth Avenue? Because that's going to happen.
Rory, there is a walkway, isn't there? Go to the next picture. That's the old model.
There is no walkway down down the west side of Fifth Avenue for the public, unless you're coming through Italy. So Clayton and Todd, to your point, there isn't a great plan to stop people from walking in traffic down Fifth Avenue. However, if the only solution is you just can't set up here, then we have to take away all of the seating, and then we'd have to take away enough seating here to allow the public, where we can't control whether they're wearing a mask or not. We can't do a temperature check or anything like that. So we would have to just eat away a lot of the footprint. Which
is there not a way that the planters look lovely and they would certainly be the most elegant solution, but is there not a barrier that would be more simple and narrow that could be on both sides of that narrow pedestrian lane, so that we achieve the best of both worlds, so that there is basically a sidewalk that is demarcated only for pedestrian throughway, which still keeps the outer perimeter of the event clearly marked?
Well, we did look at that, obviously, for the pure concept. That was a major concern, was ensuring that we had access north-south along the west side of Fifth Avenue. And we were able to do that. And I'm not trying to segue into something else, but I'll come back to it. We were able to do that by pushing the infrastructure in farther, meaning pushing it west. And we were able to maintain almost 6 feet of distance behind the activation, if you will. The problem with creating like an 18-inch width is the slimmest barrier you can get. And that's a water ballast like construction traffic barrier. Once you set that up, you really don't have a lot of space before the curb. So you need to create more space to the west. And how do you create space to the west without creating another barrier within a socially distanced scenario? So we've got people coming in, we're checking them, they're maintaining their social distance, they're getting the signage, they're speaking to an ambassador, and then we would have to create a chute. We'd have to create another perimeter to the west of this new lane to ensure that the people who are coming into the area, which is Italy's responsibility to keep safe, are kept safe from the unencumbered public, and certainly the ones who would otherwise walk in the street. So I could throw it to you guys. We have looked at this. One of my main goals was to find the maximum amount of real estate that preserved safety within a social distancing environment. And really, no matter how we cut it, we had to avoid any just random public member from coming into the site.
Looking at your diagram, I mean, I count one, there's no way, I mean, I count 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 tables, 2 top tables. There's no way that you could carve out even that minimal lane and still achieve a lot of what you want. I mean, it's so important to have people. Look, we all understand that you need the space and you have to run your event, but there's got to be some way that you can make a concession to the general public to allow them to walk there. I know that even when we had the former concessionaire, I remember we used to complain that that walkway was too narrow with bicycles and people crowding onto it, but at least we had that.
And in the pure concept, we've extended that lane. I mean, it's much better than the previous iteration. But the pure concept does not hold within the pandemic that we're in, unfortunately. This is a temporary scenario. This is not for the next 5 years at all. This is literally a social distancing attempt to do this during the pandemic. And Todd, if there were a way, and I'm not saying there isn't, I just can't, just think of it though. If we allow people down the right side of the perimeter of this venue, we'd have to create two barriers now. One to protect those people from vehicular traffic, and then another to protect those who are socially distanced from the public. And you know, I just can't.
12 feet.
I can't see, and we only have 30 tables in this whole thing. So you take away 5 of them, you've lost 1/6 of your service. Right.
And if I could just say, one of the reasons Italy is even stepping up to this, and I'm sort of saying this personally, like the Parks Department and the Conservancy, frankly, put pressure on Italy to come up with a solution to provide outside access to food. Nobody's going to make any money on this. It's not a moneymaker. Already, and taking away, you know, whatever the number of tables or whatever, however this works out, it's iffy at best if it's even going to happen. And I just personally believe on a really fundamental level that we have to find a way to make it happen, because we have to find a way for people to socialize and gather and eat and enjoy themselves, and that's what this can be.
Well, I have an idea. With the open restaurant plan that is now happening, where if a restaurant is entitled to use a lane of traffic for seating, they may, self-certifying. I mean, how, you know, what is the degree of traffic right now at that spot? Like how unreasonable, and this is an open question, maybe my own committee members can shoot me down, but how unreasonable is it to use those 18-inch barriers and put it on the eastern side of the pedestrian walkway, even if that goes into the lane of traffic?
So take the first east side lane east of the sidewalk.
Right. I mean, not those are the whole lane, but if you were to use two
talk to DOT,
two barriers, you would go into that lane. You wouldn't use the whole thing.
Yeah, but if you go into it, you're taking it. I mean, there's no 50-50 there.
I don't know. I mean, we did explore, like, can DOT take that lane away? We explored that before coronavirus. But
Well, we haven't explored it post-corona.
we have not, you're absolutely right. I mean, all of this is happening very quickly. That said,
We can
I
ask.
believe that DOT's issue is that, that's a vehicular lane. It's not a parking lane. If we turn that into
Right.
a no car lane, then we have to cut the next lane over, which is a car lane. And by the way, we don't.
Broadway is closed up and down,
Right.
above and below.
No, it might be a terrible idea, but I just beg to ask.
I
again.
like your idea. I like your creative thinking.
But we have some hands up. If it's about this issue, I'd love to hear from people too. So, oh, they all just went down, I guess. Anybody who still has a question, please. Oh, Barbara, yes, go ahead.
I actually was going to suggest looking into taking a lane. I mean, it's worth asking the question. I also think that we have to just remember that this is for 56 days. And I think that it's, I think that there is something about bringing back a little bit of spirit to the city that is so important right now. It's just a big bummer. And, summer's supposed to be fun and people want to be outdoors. And so, it's 56 days. And I think that either maybe traffic patterns can be changed or pedestrian walking patterns can be changed. I mean, we're in an extreme situation, and I can really appreciate that you don't want to take away any more space from what is relatively a pretty small footprint to begin with. And, it just makes, everything is just so challenging right now. So that's my 2 cents.
So committee, so this is not really something that would be up for a vote, since it's such a temporary revised iteration of something that we have long been on the record for years, improving what the shape of this event and the process of that RFP. So I believe that both procedurally and also for efficiency, so that our input can be incorporated immediately and these questions can start being addressed, I think it would behoove us to put our concerns and questions and support and all the things that we discussed today into a letter that can go out as soon as possible to the Parks Department and also DOT to investigate this particular issue. Seems like it might be the one that we would have the most concern about, but also to pledge our public support generally for moving ahead with a revised socially distant version of this event. If anyone disagrees with that, then please raise your hand and speak your piece. We can continue to ask questions, but I just want to let you know what I see as framing our conversation. Todd.
Yes, I completely agree. After listening to what Keats had to say, and the fact that it's just a short-term solution, we can't obsess about perfection, especially since we've lived with all sorts of issues with that space in past years. I think we should simply state, my only other comment after thinking about it is there has been such a reduction in traffic down Fifth Avenue, given the reduction of general business activity in that district, that it might not be such a big deal for 50 days to take away that lane. So, people could walk down Fifth Avenue. That I'm in the neighborhood and I see everything that's going on, right? Especially given what the whole idea of having, we're trying to generate more street traffic. And the most important thing is just people getting out and walking around. So, but I wouldn't make that, I wouldn't make that a stumbling block to get this done, right? It's simply, we ask the department, we express our concerns about DOT. If it's possible, it's possible. If it isn't, in the future, post-pandemic, obviously, this is a concern of ours.
Thank you, Todd. And I do believe too that in drafting the letter, I would just encourage us to use language so that this is not about, like I was saying to Keats earlier, this is not about a debate about whether or not the event should have these tables. It is just the practical effect of New Yorkers are New Yorkers and they will walk down Fifth Avenue. So what are we going to do about that? So I think if we frame it that way, you know, we're trying to reach solutions together. So hey, Miriam Berman is on the line, and I think that since you're on the phone, you don't have the ability to raise your hand. So Miriam, I just want to call on you because you had a lot of input in the RFP process for this event. So I wanted to call you out and see if you had any questions or comments at the moment.
Is she muted?
And Miriam, I don't know how you unmute yourself on a phone.
I think she might be the attendee that has their hand raised. Should we try that?
Oh, sure. I see her in the panelist thing.
I do too.
I'm allowing 646 to talk.
Okay, I'm unmuted. They just said hello.
Hi, Miriam. We can hear you.
Hi, Miriam.
Oh, great. Hi, everyone. I just was trying to chime in ever since Clayton said, because that's exactly what I was thinking about, was opening, you know, is taking in that lane of traffic. And because of the amount of time that it is, and, you know, I think that if it can be done, like as Todd was indicating too, to have that wonderful car, it would just be a plus all the way around, if they will, you know, if DOT will see this through. But I'm definitely in agreement in trying to grab that lane as a special effort into Fifth Avenue.
Great, thank you, Miriam. That's very helpful. And Keats, how much the world has changed that CB5 is advocating for an increased footprint for EATS.
I know, the world has changed in so many ways. Oh my God.
Wow. And Miriam, did you have any other questions or comments?
Not really. So the main kiosk is going to be the full width of the Worth Monument in front of it, right? Which is, you know, fine. You know, I don't see another way. For some reason, it has a much airier and better feeling than it had in the past. Is all I can say.
Yeah,
you know,
very
so,
different.
Yeah.
May I make a note? Miriam, just a note, you can press *9 to raise your hand, as you probably already know.
Okay, I thought I did try that, but you know, I didn't know which combination. Okay.
No, Miriam, your hand was totally raised. I just didn't know it was you, and I was ignoring you.
Okay, that's okay. You're forgiven. You're forgiven.
Great, thank you so much for the input, Miriam.
Yep, thank you. Thanks. I'm here. I'm
Okay,
listening.
you're still unable to talk, but I'm just going to mute you right now. You're still in the room.
That's fine.
So do we have any other questions or comments? And then I'm going to, yes, John.
John, you're on mute.
Okay, I just have a very general question about cashless payments. I fully understand for public health reasons and also pedestrian traffic reasons, that's preferable. I was just curious what the law is on that. I was under the impression that the city council had passed a law a while back saying that that people have the right to pay cash, paper money, and not just use credit cards or other, you know, electronic means of payment. I just wanted to get a clarification. I'm not objecting to it. I just wanted to understand what that rule really is.
I believe you're right, and there has been a flip-flop, and the jury's still out. I guess it's the only thing, and I think it has to do with legality of legal tender. We're still working it out.
Okay, thank you.
From a safety standpoint, I think it's self-evident, but but you're right, there's legalities as well.
I mean, if we had to, we'd figure it out, you know.
Okay, but it's an item on you. You've got a contingency plan, you know, A or B. If you have to do it, if you don't have to do it, that's on your plate.
Yeah, it's all kind of weighing in the balance. If we have to do it, then we have to do it. Maybe we won't advertise it because we're trying to reduce contact as much as possible.
And there's ways of managing it that, I mean, at least, you know, that can make it pretty safe.
Okay.
Thanks, John. Other questions? I'd like to ask members of the public in attendance if anyone has any questions for the application. If so, just raise your hand. Or comments. All right, I'm seeing none, but I'll keep my eye on that. We are entering last looks, I think. Committee members, do you have any other questions or comments on this revised application? So seeing no further hands, we're not going to take this to a vote, but I will just move informally that we put these comments and questions into a letter, the biggest one being the Fifth Avenue navigation, but most importantly, being on record supporting the revised iteration of this event for 2 cycles in a row. And I will wait to consult with the PSQL chairs and with Vicky, chair of the board, as to how we want to rope in the alcohol portion of that vis-a-vis our letter, so that we're on the up and up. But in whatever way, we'll make sure that the letter goes out in a procedurally sound way, that it is as helpful for you right now and as rapid as we can manage.
Thank you.
So I think that's it, unless there's any further comments from anyone. Feel free to raise your hands.
Just thank you to all that you guys do. It's really appreciated.
Thank you so much, Keats. You guys have been doing an incredible job in the middle of all this, so you have our support.
Thank you.
All right, I guess that's it. You are welcome to stay. We are next going to hear, we have Steve Simon on. Are you still with us, Steve? I know yes, there you are.
Oh, Steve's
Hi, Steve. Steve's here from the Department of Parks. And Kim, I wondered if you actually wanted to kind of kick off this item. This was something that had been tossed around in Bex a little bit about summer programs for youth this summer in the parks citywide. And yeah, Kim, I wondered if you wanted to just frame this conversation and with your specific questions as well.
Sure, thanks, Clayton. So I had been thinking a lot about what youth will have to do this summer. Of course, we recognize the summer youth employment program being somewhat halted, and of course, programming in general being late to be released. And so I had questions around how Parks was creating a recreational calendar for youth this summer. I'm just so fearful that there won't be things for kids to do, and without opportunities to either work or grow skills or be physically active and engaged, that they could turn to other behavior. And so I think providing a positive calendar of events and things like that would be really helpful. So I was curious to hear more about what the Parks Department was planning and doing and how that was being fast-tracked as we go into summer. School is out. What are kids to do? There were a lot of things that I think, since my question first came up, have since been clarified as part of either phase 3 or phase 4, around some things like, that were kind of ancillary as far as park usage regarding dog parks and girl spaces and basketball hoops and things like that. And so I think a lot of that has been clarified for phase 3 already. I also had questions about how we could better utilize community-based organizations that are experts at providing programming in our parks, and how we could provide them with an expedited process for permitting for this summer, and if that was being considered, since they know how to do this really well already. So those were some of the questions that had been kind of kicking around in my head when I had brought it up to Clayton and to Renee with interest in hearing more from the parks about what the plans were.
Great, thanks so much, Kim. Steve, I'd love to just hear your response and welcome. We haven't seen you at this committee for a while. It's nice to have you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, first of all, if Keats and Rory are still on the call, I'd like to say hello to them. Haven't spoken to either one of them in quite a while. Haven't spoken to Rory in maybe 10 or more years. So it's good to at least see him through Zoom. I don't have a hell of a lot to report, unfortunately. The Parks Department is working on a limited schedule of youth activities, which we're hoping we can start in July, but we don't have a green light to do that yet, and it probably won't be as won't be as robust is the word people use, I guess, as we might have done in past years. But we are looking at doing programming at various parks, and hopefully at least a couple of times a week. And we are hoping that we're going to be able to fill the gap to some extent. We are opening up our parks to licensed summer day camps. They can apply for a permit, and we'll be able to use our parks. Again, they're going to have to practice social distancing. They're going to have to bring in smaller groups than they have in the past, and they may not be able to use every feature of our parks or every field and every as they may have been accustomed to in the past. But we are going to try to accommodate the summer day camps. At this point, those are the only permits that we are issuing to community groups. Everything else for the summer is frozen, and we are waiting. We are waiting to get a green light to see if we're going to be able to issue permits for the summer. Right now, the system is you cannot submit an application, and we're not processing any applications. Everything is on hold. But we are hopeful that we will get the word any day now that so that we know what our situation is for the summer with respect to the permits. There are some activities. There are some activities going on at Bryant Park. I don't know if you're aware of them. I believe they had a puppet workshop today. They have chess. They have ping pong. They had kids yoga online. I think they also had that today. So Bryant Park is doing some stuff, but as you probably know, both the Union Square Park, the Union Square Partnership, and the Madison Square Park Conservancy, in response to the COVID crisis, had to cancel whatever programming they had planned.
Steve, just one quick question about the event permitting. I know that you don't have a lot of answers about this yet, but is there a difference between small and large events as part of the conversation? Is it possible that permitting would open up for events no matter what type of event if the number of people attending is expected to be smaller?
Well, you have to have a permit if you have an event with 20 or more people. We don't. There are, as far as unless we hear otherwise, there is no distinction made between larger or smaller events. But obviously, any larger event is going to create complications and is going to require a further review in terms of how it complies with the social distancing requirements. But at this point, we're not even there yet because we can't even accept any permit applications whatsoever.
All right, Kim, did you have any follow-up questions or thoughts?
Well, thank you for that update. Of course, I was hoping it'd be further along or there would be lots and lots of good news shared. So I'm sorry, could you perhaps just tell us a little more about the timeline for the potential recreational programming that will be offered? Or is it still unknown?
Well, it's It's basically still being put together. The hope, I believe, is that it will begin in mid-July.
And what would would there be a plan? How will people know about this? I mean, if it's not even known yet what the programming is, what is the avenue for getting the word out to kids?
Well, we're going to be advertising it in those respective parks. We're going to be putting up flyers. We'll be doing email blasts. We'll be putting it on our website. We'll be, I'm sure, issuing press releases. So, and we'll be informing community boards and local elected officials. So we will get the word out as best as we can.
And who are the people? Is there a department or people we already are contacts with at parks who we could communicate with about this that would be the most, efficient and smart for us?
Well, I guess I don't count, but our recreation division is handling this. Our chief of recreation in Manhattan is Kim McNeil, and she has two deputy chiefs, Malika Green and Ken Conyers.
Okay, great. That's helpful. Thank you. And you certainly count.
No, I'm really, they're much more on top of this than I am.
Well, that's the point, just that we could, with direct questions as things move along, I think we would want to do our part to stay in touch with them and see what news we can get as it happens, because it is mid-July is pretty late, and that also is just around the corner. So
right. Well, we are hoping to get this all put together very quickly, very soon. But obviously, if you can't reach any of them, you should feel free to contact me directly.
Thank you.
Is there, I'm sorry, I had one more question just around the permitting for community-based organizations. And I was just curious if there was specific thought around like excluding sports-based youth development nonprofits that are experts in doing this work. I know you specifically said only organizations that are running summer day camps.
Yeah, that's the only that's the only exclusion that's been made at this point in terms of the across the board freeze on permits. So that's the only opening right now is for summer day camps. I mean, not that this really answers your question, but we are accepting applications for the fall for sports fields and facilities for the fall. We're not processing them yet, but we have started to accept them for September, October, November, but not for the summer.
Do you think that's something that parks would be open to, given our questions around this?
Well, first of all, understand that that these are decisions that are not being made entirely by the Parks Department. It's being done in concert with City Hall, and City Hall is obviously looking closely at the COVID-19 data, and so a decision was made, as you know, a week ago that we could go into phase 3 next Monday. We could open up dog runs. We could open up basketball courts, tennis courts, handball courts, volleyball courts, bocce courts. That's the extent to which decision was made as of last week, and this is a rolling situation. So it wouldn't surprise me if we find out later this week that we have a green light to do some additional. We can open up some additional facilities. But and as I said before, we're waiting to hear what the situation will be with respect to whether we can accept permits for special events. Which would incorporate, I guess, was it Kim? What she had in mind?
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry, Kim. So, I mean, it could very well be that we're going to be told any day now that we can start accepting permits for July and August, or we could be told it's not going to happen. I don't know, but we're waiting to hear.
Sure. Okay.
Kim, I'm wondering, we can do whatever we want in a situation like this, obviously, as we're the one who put this item on the agenda. And I'm curious if you are moved to propose a resolution to ask the Parks Department and City Hall to look at these specific questions rapidly, obviously taking public health into consideration, but knowing that the community has the support to look into that and to seek some solutions.
You're not talking to me now, right?
No, I'm asking. I'm asking Kim.
All right, good.
Yeah, I mean, to the extent, I'm wondering if it would get voted on in time at full
Well,
board.
in a case like this, and this, I love having chair of the board on the call. Parliamentary procedure wise, when it comes to something like this, where the sooner our input is given, the better. Obviously, a letter is always, we can do that immediately without going through full board, which is what we're doing, for example, for what we just heard with Italy. But in this situation, a resolution does tend to have more teeth. It is a little bit stronger. And so I'm just thinking out loud here, Vicky, but one thing that we could do if the committee wants to go this route is to vote tonight in the resolution so it's the position of the committee, and either exec could endorse that committee vote on behalf of the board in shorter order so that we didn't have to wait another 10 days to be able to have that be the official position. But Vicky, I'm not sure if that's an appropriate action to take.
What do you mean by another 10 days? We would do that at exec and the full board is 2 days later. What did you mean by waiting 10 days?
Oh, well, I meant if we were able for exec to act even sooner than that.
Oh, you mean by having the exec committee, but not wait until Tuesday?
Right, that's
a week from tomorrow.
Right. Because if that's not appropriate, then a letter, I think, is just as good of a solution.
All right, but I think it would have to be, we would have to have exec approve it, or, you know, have it put its stamp on it before the full board as usual.
Yeah.
But go over it again. Tell me what exactly you're having in mind. You want to do a letter?
Well, either a letter or a resolution, because if we write a letter, it can come from the committee as we've done before quickly.
And if it's a resolution, you're concerned that we would have to wait for the full board?
That's right. And I think the most important thing right now is for City Hall just to hear that we are paying attention to this issue now.
Yeah. My only concern, and I've been thinking about this, I was going to talk to you about it privately, but our letters are usually items and issues that we've talked about before. Mm-hmm. That's the problem I'm having. And I kind of had it with the last issue that you talked about, because that's also brand new. So just from a consistency standpoint, I'd rather see a reso. Mm-hmm. And have it go to full board.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I certainly do. And I mean, I'm comfortable with that. I also think that Steve was here and heard our concerns and questions, and I'm hoping that he takes that back
bring it back
as well.
Yeah.
This is Kim again. I just want to chime in and say, you know, one other point, like, I think this is part of a bigger conversation around, you know, the systemic inequity that continues within marginalized populations, and thinking about kids that don't have access to paid programming are the ones that take advantage of free park recreation during the summer. We've seen what's happened with summer youth employment program, and now to think that they won't have any activity whatsoever. Of course, I recognize we're in the middle of a pandemic and we need to consider public health and safety. But I do think about this as part of, you know, it's a larger issue of access and inequity for kids in communities that don't have as many resources. So of course, Bryant Park is, you know, fantastic, but in the middle of a district that has a lot of resources, and, you know, not everyone has access to that park, of course, so.
I just had another thought, Clayton.
Yeah.
And I was checking my trusty little bylaws, which I just happen to have at my right elbow. But it may be in the addendum. We do have a clause for emergencies.
I didn't know that.
We do. I'd have to look it up. This is going back a long ways. We haven't done it for a very, very long time. Why don't we, how about if the committee acts on both ways of doing it, and then we can use the best one that will get it done quickest?
Okay, I love that idea. I think that, and Kim, if you don't mind, I would love for you to make the motion, because I think that you've been a champion on this issue, and it's yours to do. But I think that we should pass this as a resolution now and have that in our toolkit if that ends up being.
Right. Or if we need a letter, we could change it to a letter. How's that?
Great.
Okay.
Sure. Absolutely.
I would just like to be able to say, can I say one thing to Kim?
Oh,
sure.
Yeah.
We absolutely agree with you. And I only mentioned Bryant Park because it's in your district.
Yeah.
But the program that we are working on for youth recreation for the summer targets parks that are in the high needs areas. You know, I was reluctant to mention it before, but it does not include any parks in District 5. It does include parks on the Lower East Side, in Harlem, Washington Heights. So we are focusing on those parks, and I am confident that we are going to be able to get some of these programs off the ground, and we are going to be able to provide them to kids during the summer. And you know, we're going to do something, because this is our mission, and we want to do something, and we want to be able to plug that gap and serve people who need our services. So we are not. If I left the impression that we're oblivious to that issue, that's not the correct impression that I should be leaving.
And I appreciate that clarification. Thank you. Is there a side question? Obviously, parks aren't experts in the digital space, but is there consideration of offering virtual programming on the technical devices that kids now have access to somewhat? I mean, that's a whole host of other issues that we're seeing with school and such, but is that something being considered?
You know, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I think we may be working on stuff along those lines, but I'll have to get back to you.
Okay. So, Clayton, so I'm happy to propose a resolution. I guess I'm just curious from the rest of the committee, like, if there are questions, comments, other thoughts that might help better shape it. And hopefully I'm not the only one that sees this as a really urgent and important need for for our city's kids.
Yes, let's open the floor for committee members to add any finer points or questions or comments about our position.
Hi, Kim. This is Kelly. I totally support you. I think that it's great that you brought it up. And given the fact that Steve says that some of the other communities might have priority, I think that it makes your point even more prescient, that we show that we want some attention and we want some rapidity for the community and for the kids in our community. So thank you so much for bringing it forward.
So we're resolving then to ask them to accept applications from community groups for park access and utilization.
Yeah.
Well, I think the idea was to expand the exclusion of the restriction to include youth development organizations that already have a proven track record in some of this programming, right, Kim?
Yeah. I think that would make most sense. I maybe need to do a little more digging and research on that. I think perhaps Gail Brewer's office might be working on this a little bit too, so maybe there's someone I can speak with. But I think it's, you know, essentially creating urgency behind the development of summer youth recreational programming and consideration of other sports-based youth developers that like you said, Clayton, have expertise and stellar track records and could potentially be partners in also providing programming. I recognize these are strange and unusual times, and of course, like public safety and health have to be top of mind as well. But with the risk of, an entire generation of kids being left even further behind because of this pandemic and because of these longstanding systemic inequities, I just think this is like so vital. And be it resolved.
Barbara, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to also give my support for what you're proposing, Kim. It is so critical, and I am a little concerned that, Wednesday is July 1st, and there really is nothing in place. It's, we've been living with the situation for unfortunately a little while now, and I don't think you can stress the urgency enough. It's, for kids, particularly coming from remote learning, which may or may not have been all that successful, depending on the situation, to really not have some structure for the summer for so many kids. And then, of course, there are a lot of parents who are working, hopefully, who, then they can't, they're not able to give those kids, full attention or be their playmate for the summer. I think this is super critical. I really do. And I thank you for bringing this to our attention.
Thank you, Barbara. Anyone else? Are there any questions or comments from members of the public? So, Kim, why don't you go ahead and make a motion, and let's take this to a vote if the resolution is the way that we will end up moving forward.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Clayton. So I propose a resolution to the Parks Department that outlines that, as I had mentioned before, with an entire generation of kids being at risk of, being left even further behind because of the coronavirus pandemic and because of longstanding systemic inequities, we urge the Parks Department to expedite the planning of summer recreational programming for youth, as well as further consideration and further consideration of other proven sports-based youth developers to be applicable as service providers as well.
Excellent. That's great. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Craig, let's take it to a vote.
Clayton.
Yes.
Craig, yes. Miriam. She might be on mute.
I unmuted you, Miriam.
Yes, sorry. Yes.
Okay. Callie.
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Will.
Yes.
Sam.
Yes.
Mike. Mike still on? Yeah, Mike is on. I don't know if he's muted.
Mike, you're unmuted.
Yes. Okay. Kim.
Yes.
Evan.
Yes.
Todd.
Yes.
Barbara.
Yes.
Daniel. He's still on? He might have dropped off. Yeah, he dropped off.
Yeah.
Noah.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. Thank you, Craig. Thanks, Kim. And also tomorrow, Luke, let's try to help facilitate getting Kim in touch with somebody at the borough president's office, perhaps, who, like she says, would already have been working on this and might help her with some detail about this.
We do have somebody from the borough president's office on the call right now. I don't know if they would be able to speak. Brian, I'm going to allow you to talk if you're still with us.
Hi, yeah, no, I'd be happy to help. Thank you.
Great, we'll connect with you.
Thank you. And Brian, just while we have you, is this something that you're aware of that someone in Gail's office is already working on, or do you know?
Yeah, we are aware of it, yes.
Clayton,
Yes.
now that it's a reso, we can get it out immediately. We can have the exec committee vote on it in an emergency and then have the full board ratify it. But the letter will be able to go out immediately, you know, as soon as it's ready.
Okay, great. There
Do
you
it
go.
that way. If it's a reso, that's better.
Excellent. That's great. Thanks. Vicky, accordingly, do you believe that we should be taking a vote on a resolution for the prior item as well for the same reason?
Yeah, it bothers me because it's really new, even though you've had input on EATS before, or because of how they've operated, you didn't even have to. You gave it a no comment, correct? Or is that's PSQL that gives it the no comment?
The PSQL has given it a no comment. We've written letters about EATS for years because it was such a ongoing project in development. You know, it got better year after year, and I don't think we wanted to deny support for it, but we also didn't want to have unanimous support for an event where we felt like there was so much room for improvement.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of a tricky one.
Okay, but now on this one, is there a time element?
There is on the Italy one.
Yeah.
There
Can
is
that wait until full board?
because they want to get it going by the end of next month.
Well, we could do the same thing. If you do a reso, my concern is that there's new information in there.
Right.
And our letters are really reiterating things that committees have really already taken a position on, that have gone to the full board, and then we're only, you know, making further comments, substantiating something that the board has already agreed to. But this is basically new because it's a new setup.
Well, I suppose that is true, and a resolution would be fine. We can totally do that. The main thing that I think our concern has been about this new iteration is that Fifth Avenue issue, which has been our historic issue with this event. So
and it's no different.
And it's no, so in that sense, the letter absolutely reflects what we've been talking about for, oh my God, 10 years.
Okay.
That one issue, obviously we've never talked about social distancing before, but their plan seems so well thought out that we didn't even really have that many questions for them about that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm open to whatever is the best thing to do procedurally. There's no harm in voting, obviously.
Yeah. Well, you know better than I in terms of what the committee has done regularly regarding Fifth Avenue. And if that's the case, if we're on record, then I don't see a problem. My concern was that there was something so new about what we were saying, but basically the part that you're concerned with is the Fifth Avenue part of it.
That's what we spent the most time talking on, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's true. I'll leave it up to you. I think it's good either way. If you feel that the letter, we can send the letter out immediately. That might be the best way.
Yeah, I think let's stick with that. I think that also now that Keats isn't here, I feel more comfortable kind of doing it that way, if that's okay.
Okay.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Kim and everyone. Thank you, Steve, for joining us if you're still here.
I'm still here.
Thank you for hanging out with us.
All right, pleasure. All right, take care.
You too, you're welcome anytime. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
We did have a late arriving item, and this was, and again, procedurally, I'm a little bit unclear what we're doing, but this was a resolution that CB10 passed to advocate for a statue in Central Park honoring the Exonerated 5. Hold on, I'm just getting my email. Because I want to show you guys this resolution. Here it is. So they are seeking support from other community boards surrounding Central Park. Since we definitely can't vote on this, since we didn't notice it, we didn't know about it until today. At the very least, I wanted to share it with you and make sure that we had support on the committee for lending our support for this project. And if so, Vicky, by email, we were communicating about whether this might go to another committee who might have time to notice it so that it could go to full board in the proper way. But I think it probably still makes sense for this committee to review it. Do you agree?
Definitely.
So let me just. Okay, everyone's seeing this? So this is for an exhibit in Central Park to commemorate the Exonerated 5 and the movement for social justice. The details of the entire event, which I believe everyone here probably is very familiar with, but I will also, I'm happy to share this by email with the committee afterwards, is outlined here from 1989 with the convictions of the 5 youth being vacated in 2002, the city being sued and finally reaching a settlement in 2014, and the experience of those young men and their families being something that in our country was such a flashpoint for so many critical issues that our city is still seeing. So the Parks and Recreation Committee on CB10 has been advocating for the installation of an exhibit based on social justice, and that is dovetailed with a commemoration to the Exonerated 5 in Central Park. They've been working on that for several months, but it's been formalized now in the resolution last month. So they are coming to us to ask for our support for their proposal to move forward with advocating for a permanent exhibit. We don't have any details about beyond that, what the exhibit would be or who it would be fabricated by, etc. It's far too soon for that, but I think this is just about lending our voice and our support to, I think, a worthy project. So I'm wondering if there are questions or comments to this. I'm going to unshare my screen. Are there any questions or comments? So we can't vote on this. So, oh, Mike, are you? If you are
Mike, you have to unmute yourself.
Oh, I think he's talking to someone else.
Oh.
So this might be another situation where if our opinion in the form of a letter with advocacy can be helpful, we can do that, I believe. But we cannot vote at the moment. So that's really the extent of the activity that can happen on this item during this meeting. But I think in the coming days, we'll figure out if there's another committee that can formally hear this. And if so, it'll certainly be helpful for that committee to know that this committee reviewed it as well. Unless there are any further thoughts on that, I think that's all that we can do at the moment about this.
Do you want to take like a straw poll on how the committee, without any input from the public, which is what we need to make it official, do you want to get feedback from the committee? I think that might be helpful, that if
Yeah,
we're moving
absolutely.
in the right direction.
Absolutely. Anyone wants to raise your hand and chime in? And yes, Chris.
Yeah, my gut reaction without hearing any community feedback is that I think this is a great resolution, a great thing to support. One issue that comes up for me is whether the Exonerated 5 would actually want this. So I would want there to be some language in there making sure that it doesn't happen without their consent and their support. But besides that, I have no problems with it, and I think it would be a great addition to Central Park.
Thank you, Chris. That's duly noted. Anyone else? I am taking it, of course, to assume that a lack of raised hands means that you just agree with everything. I will also ask if there's anyone else, members of the public who are here, who have any questions or comments to this project. Feel free also to raise your hand. It looks like we just simply have support. So I guess from this point, we will alert you as to what agenda this ends up on next. And this can be somewhat more formalized. All right, everyone, that is the end of our formal agenda. I did put a kind of mini orientation on our agenda for tonight. I am noting, however, that we do not have Mary with us tonight. And given that we've already had an hour and 40-minute meeting, I'm wondering if we might want to schedule a separate Zoom call just for the orientation so that we can have Mary. And also, given that we, right now anyway, don't have a meeting cycle scheduled for August, we do have several weeks ahead of us that it might be more wise to schedule that orientation. Does anyone have any objection to that? I will bring up, though, that one of the main reasons I thought to have this kind of quick orientation now was mostly to answer any of the new members' questions. If you have anything that's come up in this kind of dizzying array of conversations that we've had publicly with all these different city agencies and entities and NGOs and bids and on and on and on, so many acronyms populate our brains. If there's any way we can answer any questions or clear anything up or anything along those lines. Obviously, parks related would make the most sense, but anything that's come up that you might have questions about is the main reason I wanted to kind of open the floor for an orientation tonight. So if you do have any thoughts or questions, feel free to let us know.
Hey, Clayton, I have an unrelated question to that, so I'll let anyone chime in if
Sure, go ahead, Aaron. Go ahead.
So just in regards to New York City parks and monuments and statues, et cetera, there's been a lot of challenges and controversies all across the city. Well, specifically the Teddy Roosevelt statue in front of the National Museum. And I don't even know what the latest of that situation is. I know it's on park property, so the museum is, basically telling people it's not their call. Do we know on any of our parks in our district, obviously I've seen recent Columbus Circle conversations come up again with naming, et cetera, but are there any other specific to statues or monuments in any of our parks that has been sort of spurred recent debate or anything worthy to talk about? Or I don't know if there are any, but I was just curious if you had heard anything or if anyone on the committee had heard any, updates on any specific conversations similar to the other ones.
Personally, I have not heard anything about that aside from a little bit of grumbling over the years about the George Washington statue in Union Square. But nothing that rose to the level of the Teddy Roosevelt debate right now. I don't know if anyone else has any more intel on that in our district. But no, Aaron, I don't know specifically.
Okay. And we haven't taken a stance on the Columbus Circle conversation or debate, have we, in the past?
No.
Okay.
I don't know if this is appropriate for me to mention, but according to the city's maps, that's in Community Board 4. Don't know if that's, we still weigh in on it.
Yeah, he's like a block from us.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Todd, you have to unmute yourself. Todd Shapiro,
Yeah.
did you mean to raise your hand?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So I'm just saying, with all the statues being torn down all over the country, and the mention of statues even with the city, there's more statues in our park than any place else. And I just hope that our community board will say something or have some influence to make sure they don't get torn down or taken down precipitously. I'm just remembering, you know, the discussions we've had on many statues, the ones in Central Park about the role of women. Our district is filled with statues that the historic aspect of them is less important than the fact that they've become critical pieces of our neighborhood. And I just hope that we can exercise whatever influence we have to make sure that if they're going to come down, that they come down in a reasoned and careful way and not just torn down, you know, in a moment of political expediency. I mean, that's our Parks Committee. Hopefully will have some say or role in that.
Well, the only experience that we've had in this city of statues coming down took many, many months of de Blasio putting a task force together and looking at it, and the removal of the J. Marion Sims statue in particular in Central Park, although not in our district, was certainly a great victory for all of New York. And any situation as extreme as that, I would relish the opportunity for the community board to hear that publicly so that we could take a position and hopefully unanimously take a position that we would support the removal of something that is such a scar on American history. That said, Todd, to your concern about it being done in a reasonable manner, I do think that if there were a case like that in our district, we would have the opportunity to weigh in, and we would do that in an appropriate way. But thank you for the point. All right, everyone. I think that's going to call it for tonight. Unless anyone has any last questions or comments, I think that we can adjourn and stay tuned for an updated date for an orientation, and we will do a proper orientation on a separate date free of a committee meeting, with many thanks in advance for your flexibility and for your reasoned input and collaboration tonight. It is always a pleasure to work with all of you. Hope you all are healthy and safe, and we will be in touch soon. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all so much.